Okay, so back to our Labrador retrievers. Okay, so we have two different genes that affect each other. So that would be the pigment or no pigment versus pigment concentration. So how dark or how light. So as you can see, if you have no dark pigment in the fur, it's gonna be lowercase. Okay, but if you have dark pigment, it's gonna be uppercase. Um, so that's how we get the difference between the fur and then your nose, lips, and rim. Okay, so you can have polygenic inheritance, which means some phenotypes are determined by additive effects of two or more genes on a single characteristic. So basically, what that means is you can have your phenotypes on a specific continuum. Okay, so they can vary in their, I guess, color or height, weight, intelligence, behaviors. So majority of your genes are actually like this. So if we look at skin color, we have albinism. So however, albinism can be inherited. It's a single gene trait. That's the only exception. Okay. So you can have this thing called melanin, which is the universal brown color. Okay, so melanin is the how you get the color of your skin. So the amount of melanin you have, obviously, if you have more melanin, you're going to have darker skin. If you have less melanin, you're going to have lighter skin. Okay, so if you have tyrosine with enzymes, that's going to cause a decrease in it. You're going to have an increase in melanin with it. Without the enzyme activity or with the enzyme activity. So these are, different examples of albino animals that you can see in nature. Now you can have sex-linked traits. Genes are on your sex chromosomes because you get them from X or Y from your parents, as opposed to autosomal chromosomes, which are all your others. This dude called T.H. Morgan at Columbia University was the first to discover your sex-linked traits. He focused on a specific type of fly, which is called Drosophila breeding. What he did is he used the flies because they were a very good genetic subject. And they looked at them in 2-week generations with 4 specific pairs of chromosomes. So they looked at males versus females, so XX versus XY. So we're looking at eye color here. So the parental cross was between a true breeding red eye female and a true breeding white eye female. Okay, then he had the F1 generation. Okay, where he got red eye offspring 100%. So it worked with Mendel's laws. But then the F2 generation, we had 100% red eye females and 50% red eye males and 50% white eye males. Okay. So it doesn't follow Mendel's laws. So like, what the heck? So this is kind of how he broke down the Punnett squares. Okay, so if we had red versus white, okay, so we would have our homozygous and dominant versus homozygous recessive cross. That's how we get the 100% red eyes. But then if you cross the heterozygous dominant, okay, with the heterozygous dominant, that's where you would get the 3 red and then the 1 white. That's going to be your lethal range. Okay, so we have to reconsider because the way that they crossed that, there's too many traits of the white that could be dangerous or detrimental. So we had to kind of go about it a different way. Okay, so he looked at it in this term. Okay, so we kind of had, our sex-linked traits then, because whenever he found that the one white fly died, okay, in that, he was like, okay, there has to be something more with how I'm crossing them. So he looked at the sex-linked traits. So we have XX and XY, okay? So XX would be red, so capital R next to it for the recessive, or for the dominant. And then you would have XY, which would be a lowercase r, for the recessive for white. Okay, so this is how you would get the 100% red eyes. But you would get half male, half female, but 100% red eye. Here, you would then take your heterozygous female with your dominant male, okay, and cross them. And so then that's where you would get 100% red females, okay, and then you'd get 50% red male and 50% white male. So if you crossed it that way, you would be happy, it would be good. Now, if you look at genetics of sex, in humans and other mammals, there's 2 sex chromosomes. You have X and Y. Now, if you're an X, you have 2 X chromosomes. That means you're a female. Now, if you have an XY chromosome, then you're gonna be a male, okay? So XY versus XX. XX, obviously, they're both the same chromosome, so, you're gonna have some redundancy there. But with XY, you're gonna get a little bit more differentiation because you have an X and a Y, so they're very different chromosomes. So there are specific genes on sex chromosomes. So for your Y chromosome, the other genes other than maleness would be sex determining region, master regulator for maleness, and it turns on the genes for production of male hormones. X chromosome, you can have other genes or traits beyond your sex determination. Okay, so you could have mutations on your X chromosome like hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, color blindness. So that means from your mom, those are certain mutations that you can have. So if sex-linked usually means X-linked, okay, because you have more than 60 diseases traced to genes on the X chromosome, okay? So most diseases that are common are from the mom. Okay, so these are all the 60 diseases that can happen on the different parts of your X chromosome. Yes, it's a lot. So if you look at the map of the human Y chromosome, there's about 30 genes on the Y chromosome because remember, it's way smaller than the X. Okay, so here are some of the examples of them. I know this is a bunch of words that don't really mean much to you, but there's kind of little thoughts next to them to kind of help you remember what they match to. Now, linked genes are inherited together. So chromosome is passed on as an entire unit. So if genes are on the same chromosome, they're linked. Okay, so they end up not assorting independently. So if you look at the Drosophila flies, okay, you can look at the different comparisons of the genes, okay, and which ones would be brought together. So normal, or the parental generation, is referred to as the wild type, okay? And if you have deviants, okay, are referred to as recombinants. Deviants means those that stray from the parental wild type. Okay, so here's some examples of wild type phenotypes in these flies versus the mutant phenotype, so the deviant or recombinations. So here's another practice. Go ahead and do it. Now we have X inactivation. Female mammals inherit 2 X chromosomes. Okay, we are XX. So one X becomes inactivated during our embryonic development. It condenses into compact object, which is called a bar body. Which X becomes a bar body is random. Okay, so it could be the X that I got from my mom, or it could be the X that I got from my dad. It's just random. Okay, so that's where you can kind of see the bar body there where it's just kind of condensed, and the X, it causes the other X to become inactivated. So if you look at this cat, tricolor cats can only be females, and that's because of this bar body. If it's you have patches of black, it's obviously that's where you're cutting out the orange, but then if you have patches of orange, obviously that's cutting out the patches of black. So here's some more picture examples of bar bodies. You can see the bar body in the female, but definitely not in the male. Environmental effects is called epigenetics. So the phenotype is controlled by both your environment and your genes. Okay, so human skin color is influenced obviously by the genetics, okay, but environmental conditions too. So if you're in an environment where there's a lot of sunlight, you're gonna be darker, okay? So coat color in Arctic foxes is influenced by heat sensitive alleles. Okay, so this is the same type of fox, but this is the fox in winter, and then this is the fox during your spring or summertime. The same for hydrangea flowers. Okay, it's influenced by the pH of the soil. Okay, so it doesn't even just have to be sunlight, but it's the actual pH of the soil. So the way your epigenetics works is you kind of have these transcription factors on our histones that can cause a change in the gene expression. When we go over DNA replication and transcription and translation, this would make more sense. Okay, so we're going to go over these things called pedigrees now and how they're a little bit different than a Punnett square. Okay, so pedigree analysis reveals a pattern in human inheritance with individuals that share genes. It kind of shows you a genetic family tree. Okay, so normally they have males as squares and females as circles. If someone is affected, they're going to have their shape be completely shaded in. If they are not affected but they carry the gene, it'll be halfway shaded in. Parents, so those that mate, have a line connecting to them directly next to each other. But if you are siblings, you are branching off from a parent. Okay, so this is kind of just to show you a basic key for what all of these can mean. Okay, so we have the marriage line, line of descent, the sibling line, okay, male, female, female, male. Okay, so you can see mom is a carrier. Okay, dad is normal. They have a son and a daughter. The son is has the disorder and marries a woman with a carrier. Okay, the daughter is a carrier and marries a normal male. Okay, so this is how it gets passed on to the offspring. Okay, so here I want you to go ahead and pause, answer what type of inheritance does this trait follow, dominant, incomplete dominant, codominance, all those kinds of things, and check the video of me explaining for your answer. Same here. Now go ahead, pause, read this question, and tell me what you get as your answer. You should get autosomal dominant, okay? Autosomal means it's not sex-linked. Now here's some more human genetic diseases and examples, okay? We have 80% of rare diseases are caused by faulty genes, so mistakes in the genes. Okay, so we can have this disease called cystic fibrosis. It is recessive, okay? 1 in 25 whites is a carrier, okay? It's a normal allele that codes for a membrane protein that transports chlorine across cell membranes. If you don't get treated, children can die before 5, but with treatment, you can live past your late 20s, but you don't really go any farther than that. Okay, it's basically an issue where you get mucus buildup in the pancreas, lungs, and digestive tract and causes tons of bacterial infections. Your cells can't move or breathe. It's very, very, very fatal. So this is effect of it on lungs to kind of give you the visual of your chloride channels. This is to show you the actual chromosomes where you have the issues, and these moms are kind of patting their babies to kind of help with the movement of the mucus so it doesn't block all of the air sacs in their lungs. So that is where you have the deletion of your amino acid here when you have cystic fibrosis. You literally can get this deadly disease just by losing one amino acid. I'm going to go ahead and pause and catch up in the next one.